Hey y'all, and welcome to Brawl. My name is Brian, and Laura Ingraham completely exposes this ridiculous woke Democrat who deep down does not care one bit about illegal immigration. Let's dive in.
What process do you think is still due an individual who two courts found had reasonable belief to believe he had an affiliation with MS-13, who his wife initially said had scratched her and caused a bruising on her body? What process would make you feel like the Constitution and our framers' understanding of it would be fulfilled?
So, Laura, you and I can disagree on, this individual in particular. I'm not here to really advocate for one person. That needs to happen in court. No evidence has actually ever been presented.
You went to El Salvador. Now you're saying it's not about him? Of course it's about him.
Due process.
You went to El Salvador for a political stunt, and now you're saying it's not about him.
It is about this case. Laura, it is about the rule of law. This is a bipartisan issue. It transcends partisan politics. That's why a conservative-leaning Supreme Court has said that Donald Trump must facilitate the return of this individual. This is very dangerous. We are turning into an authoritarian country, and there are Americans from all across the political spectrum who are deeply concerned about this. Again, my office has not received more calls about any other issue since I have been a congresswoman than this one, tariffs being the second one, and the lack of real logical economic policy. But the issue of due process, no, these are the and when we had a town hall the other night, this is the issue.
All right,
and the economy is a mess as well, unfortunately, under this administration.
Before we go, Congresswoman, also in Maryland, I know American citizens and crimes committed against them might not be a top priority. It is for this show. An illegal alien from Guatemala was just charged with his girlfriend's murder in Maryland, same state, of course, Mr. Abrego Garcia is from. She was missing for 2 weeks, mother of 2 young kids. Police found her buried in a forest. Do you know about this story? Do your constituents care about those victims? And do you intend on calling that family, since Maryland residents are obviously a concern in some way, shape, or form for you and all the people of your state?
I'm appalled by any violence that takes place in this country. As a former city official, I have a very strong pro-public safety record, and that's why I believe in the rule of law, and that's why this case is so important. I think these questions are a distraction from the main issue, which is that Donald Trump is defying the Supreme Court of the United States, and every American should be concerned about this.
Well, the violence committed by illegal immigrants against innocent Americans and legal immigrants has been appalling.
It is devastating.
Absolutely appalling.
Any violence,
and I wish there was one moment where Democrats acted like they
appalling.
cared about that. I know this is the progressive way of dealing with interviews where you just, I'm not trying to talk over you. I'm actually trying to get a question answered. I asked you a simple question. What process is due Mr. Abrego Garcia in the United States that you believe he has not received or could receive if he's undeported, which is the Democrats' priority? Undeport him, bring him back here. What process do you want him to receive that would make you happy and feel good? Could he ever be deported?
It's very clear. The Supreme Court says return him, and in court we can have a discussion about what action should be taken.
No.
This administration admitted they made a mistake.
He doesn't matter to you.
This administration admitted that they made a mistake.
I don't think he matters to you,
Mr. Garcia.
I think
this is a fact, Laura. Unfortunately, you're not sticking to the facts of the case, which is that
I know the facts. Actually,
he made a mistake.
I've been very clear on the facts. Yeah, well, Congresswoman, if you want to come on the show, we'd love to have you back.
I believe in the Supreme Court.
But you don't. Right. But if he's, I will just say this on the show, and you can come back. Just wait. Take a breath. If he comes back, let's say he is undeported, and the Democrats happy about that. If he's undeported, he will be deported from the United States. That will make you miserable, correct? That'll set off a whole new firestorm,
Laura,
because what you care about is an illegal immigrant's rights to be here ad infinitum.
This is a union
you don't want him
member, a
deported.
person
That's
with
the
a
real
U.S.
story.
citizen, wife. This is a person who the Supreme Court has said needs to be facilitated back to the United States. That's a fact.
We got it. You will never support the deportation of this individual. That is the truth.
Oh, due process. Oh, I love that phrase, due process. I love that as an American. Due process is a good thing. And I'm kind of shocked Shocked that Democrats have the guts to talk about due process. Let's start off with a brief list, shall we? Okay, so when it comes to due process, what happens when an illegal immigrant comes into America? Okay? They get charged and deported. I don't think the Democrats were caring too much when these illegal immigrants were flooding our border for during the previous administration. All right, an estimated 10.5 million illegal migrants, almost doubling the originally stated number, which, by the way, that originally stated number has been around since the early 2000s. Of 12,000, the current estimation is somewhere around 30 million right about now. So, yeah, I was shocked that Democrats would have the guts to talk about due process. Well, how about the due process of people like Rachel Morin or Kayla Hamilton, both which were slain by illegal migrants, both in the state of Maryland, by the way, that Chris Van Hollen, the senator from Maryland, should be comforting, the families he should be talking with. Instead, he and his cronies like you, Miss Yasmin, who represents Arizona's 3rd Congressional District, you'd think that they would care more about these victims. Isn't that what basic empathy is supposed to do? But no, the Democrats weaponize empathy and then blame you for the problems when you point out that, hey, these illegal immigrants are being deported. This is a good thing. But then let's continue down this whole idea of due process. Again, Democrats didn't care when illegal immigration had reached its peak. They didn't care when these individuals were slain in the streets. Also, remember, by the way, her name is Laken Riley. They didn't care about due process then. And oh, by the way, remember that time when Joe Biden sent his Department of Justice straight to Mar-a-Lago, the home of Donald Trump, and then investigated him because he wasn't working as well with the National Archives as he would have liked. And then ask yourself, well, where was the raid on Joe Biden's unregistered amount of classified documents out in Chinatown? Or in Mike Pence's own basement? I mean, batting 1 for 3, that's pretty good if you're in baseball. That's not good when you are the Department of Justice. Not to mention back when, Joe Biden was the president and he was looking into his main political rival. So just look past that banana republic nonsense, shall we? Let's continue to talk about due process. Then let's also talk about the idea that a district attorney running for office in New York City decided that his main campaign goal would be to get Trump. And then he brought up a case that the previous district attorney didn't want to touch with a 39.5-foot pole. And then that same district attorney then magically found that, Donald Trump has lied about the value of Mar-a-Lago. And what they really did was lower the estimated value, and that way they could charge Trump for fraud. Yeah, I don't think that's due process. So forgive me when I don't believe a single Democrat, let alone one of the 4 congressional members that went down to El Salvador to see and check on Abrego Garcia, an alleged MS-13 member, a man with a terrible rap sheet against his own family, not to mention multiple instances of being stopped by other authorities and checked and seeing, there was a traffic stop in Tennessee where he was magically transporting people across state lines. None of their stories added up, or worse, their stories actually did add up, and they all claimed the exact same place of residence, almost as if they were being coached on what to say to the public, what to say to the police. How about him getting picked up with 2 other known MS-13 gang members in Maryland? How about the tattoos on his knuckles that said MS-13? All right. How about the fact that a rival gang forced him to flee El Salvador because of his alleged ties to MS-13? That's why he came here to begin with, to escape any potential reprisal from rival gang members. And he brought those problems with him. And the Democrat Party is out here screaming about due process, all because he was deported 1 step too soon? You have got to be kidding me. And then to scream about the Supreme Court, which, by the way, 3 months ago, these Democrats were screaming bloody murder about the Supreme Court and had been for the better part of a couple of years, all because they were mad at Clarence Thomas for taking vacations with his friends. Yeah, I don't believe a Democrat for a moment when they talk about due process. I don't believe her constituents for a moment that they're ringing on her phones night and day at her offices. The truth about that situation is it's a bunch of old, rich white liberals who have nothing better to do. They've already destroyed their children's futures by sending them to these ridiculous public schools, and then we've watched how that's turned out. And now these rich white liberals are calling her morning, noon, and night, worried about due process, worried about Trump, worried about tariffs. I'm not buying this nonsense anymore. They don't have any empathy within their bodies. They have nothing in their souls. And they ultimately are trying to come on places like Laura Ingraham and scream about due process and that the Supreme Court has told the Trump administration that he must facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia. Well, guess what? Trump tried. He quite literally turned to the president, Bukele, and said, hey, can you return Garcia? The president laughed and said, no, we're not releasing alleged MS-13 members back on the streets. Good for President Bukele, good for President Trump, and good for Laura Ingraham for not backing down to this nonsense. And I hope you don't either. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed this segment here on Brawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.